What's up, everybody? Redefined TV here, and similar to our last webisode, this particular content needs a man's touch. I want to talk about positioned to be found, but what about the finder? I'm gonna tell you why I think this is important, because I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one that has noticed that there is a plethora, an embarrassing amount of content out there, education out there about the lady in waiting, waiting to be found, waiting for your Boaz. All this content centered around the woman becoming, and she's practicing purity, and she's practicing celibacy, and she's practicing abstinence, and pray for your future husband. All that stuff is great. I'm not trying to minimize or knock anybody's ministry or anything like that, but this is my concern. If we're focused so much on her becoming, but we're not equally focusing on, or what I believe we should be focusing on more, him becoming, him being pure. Like, when have you heard content, when to know you're ready to be a husband, when to look for a wife, what does a wife look like, pray for your future wife? We hear more content on this side and less content on this side, and the danger with that is, man, what happens if we're preparing a woman to wait for a man that doesn't exist because we're not constructing him? First thing, I really firmly believe that we have to understand that the man has to live a life that's surrendered to Jesus. He has to be kingdom. Why? Because if he's not kingdom, he will not know how to treat her like a queen. Kingdom men learn how to be kingdom by serving and honoring and living a surrendered life to the king. In other words, the more I abstract my behavior from the king, the more I can become a king and treat you like a queen. But if I don't know royalty, I will always treat you like a commoner. Ooh, so this means I only have the capacity to treat you like kingdom. We have enough men that can lead women to the king size bed, but do we have enough men that can lead them into the king's presence, right? We have enough women who are practicing purity, but are we teaching men to protect her purity, not prey on it, but protect it? We need men who are kingdom enough to resist the seductress, but also tender enough to be their wife's pillow. I know that you could be her protector, but can you also be her pillow? We know that you're strong, but can you also be meek? First thing we must have is men that are surrendered to Jesus. I'm gonna step out on the limb. I know I might get some slack for saying this, but I firmly believe that it's true. A man cannot be faithful to you if he is not faithful to him. Many times sisters are looking for a godlike attribute in a godless man. Faithfulness is a godly attribute. We see this with Joseph. Please notice Joseph, when he was approached with Potiphar's wife, listen what he said. He said, man, my master's put me in control of all this stuff except you. How could I do this wicked thing unto God? So the man must first recognize it's not about getting caught. It's not about having a baby outside of wedlock. It's not about getting an STD. It is about my relationship with the Lord. I'm not scared of getting caught. That's not why I'm being faithful. What I don't want to have is broken intimacy with my king. Like, I want to be close to him. I want to feel his presence. I want to be so close to him that I feel his breath. I want him to be my everything, and I cannot do that when my eyes are clouded with my own self-pleasure. This is why it's so dangerous for you to be unequally yoked, because when a person is unequally yoked, if you're a Christian woman and he's a godless man, this means there's a level of love that you'll never be able to receive, because he's not going to consider 1 Corinthians chapter 13. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love is gentle. Love keeps no record of wrongdoings. Love covers a multitude of sins. He's going to give you what he thinks is love versus what God says is love. That's one of the dangers of being unequally yoked. My second point, I believe one reason why a lot of men are disenchanted with church is due to the feminization of Jesus, this portrayal of him as this blonde-haired, blue-eyes hipster that is so peaceful, has a perm in his hair, and he's this, I come in peace type of guy. But when I read the scriptures, Jesus was a man's man. First of all, he was a carpenter, so he was lifting up wood and chopping down trees and hammering nails, so he probably had some calluses in his hand. He probably had some definition, some bulk to him, because he kept lifting up stuff. And the Bible says his hair was like wool and his eyes were like fire. There was probably a reason why when he went into the temple and flipped over those tables, they didn't mess with him, because Jesus had a presence with him. He had a power power with him, and he was fully confident. He was not a people pleaser. The disciples will come to him and say, Lord, what you're teaching offends the people. Lord, what you're teaching offends the Pharisees. And he would say stuff like, oh, this offends you. Don't be like the Pharisees. Don't be like the Pharisees, for they don't practice what they preach. They are like whitewashed tombs. He was bold, radical. He was not this timid, I'm scared to hurt anybody's feelings, hipster kind of guy. He's the Lord of Lords, the King of Kings, and the apex of masculinity. Until we view him as our paradigm, until we view him as the blueprint of manhood, then we really can't operate with true, genuine manhood. And I think the last thing we have to consider is Jesus was a disciplined man. He was disciplined with prayer. He was disciplined with fasting. He was disciplined with serving. And discipline is a diet of the next level. The devil loves an undisciplined man because they're prone to make choices that are not conducive for their destiny. He loves an undisciplined man because they're prone to make choices that are not conducive for their destiny. We need the comeback of kingdom men to arise in the earth. This type of attitude is what we need to have. You have to first get through me. You have to first come through me. This is why the enemy wants you out the picture, because it's easier to overtake a kingdom once the king is absent. So the problem is, number one, we're out the picture, or number two, we're silent. We see this with Adam and Eve all day. Eve was sitting right there talking to a snake, and Adam said nothing. It is dangerous when you're a man that will let your woman talk to a snake because you can't identify the demonic. We need men who, number one, love Jesus, who recognized Jesus was not this feminine guy, but he was the apex of masculinity and discipline. For why should you look for any woman to join your garden when you have not followed the rules that God told you to apply to your life while you're in the garden? And ladies watching this, please remember, a man that has an unmowed garden gives room for snakes. God told this man to dress and keep the garden. That's what he told Adam. Dress and keep the garden, right? So he has responsibilities while he's here. If he doesn't follow God's responsibilities, God's principles, if he is not a man that follows God's principles, he'll open you up to be attacked by principalities. Gosh, I hope you get this. You need a leader who knows how to do warfare. It is a terrible thing for a man to have a PhD in following, but a GED in leading. And I find it so funny if you say the word leader slow. Lead her. Leader. Lead her. And the only way you can lead is you have to be led. This is Redefined TV, where we're redefining relationships righteously.